So check this out. Today, I'm going to be showing you something that can improve your portraits when you're painting and will drastically give it a more realistic look, have it looking more in depth, have it looking more vibrant. This technique right here is going to elevate your work. I promise you. Now, you've seen in a previous video, I talked about oiling out. Well, there's also something opposite to that, which is oiling in. Now, some people use the words interchangeably and they call oiling out, oiling in. Me, I like to separate the two and have two distinctive meanings for both. So for oiling out, which you can check out that video right here. For oiling out, that's when I want to saturate the picture completely, have it all evenly covered in oil. But for oiling in, which I'm going to do with this portrait right here, I usually use that as my last layer for fine details, for certain color saturation in certain areas. And that is what really makes the portrait pop. Now, before we get into that, I'm trying to grow this channel to 1,000 and beyond. I need you guys to hit that subscribe button. If you really like this video and enjoy the content I'm putting up, make sure to hit that like button. Make sure to share it with whoever you think could use these tips on how to get their oil painting techniques down pat. I almost stumbled there. Anyways, let's get into the video. Now let's talk about what you're gonna need to do this technique. First thing first, you're gonna need some stand oil. You could also use linseed oil. Use linseed oil or stand oil because it's thick enough to get this technique down and it's gonna really saturate your oil painting. Do not use liquid. I wouldn't recommend using liquid. Also, something like linseed oil or stand oil being more thicker, it's slower drying. So definitely use linseed oil or stand oil. Next up, you're gonna need some Gamsol. Now, Gamsol is just to thin it out a bit for your mixture. When you're using something like stand oil, it's very thick. So when you put it on, it's good. Number one, if you put it on without the Gamsol, it's gonna take very long to dry. And also it's gonna be harder to work with that final layer. You can use straight stand oil, but the best results I've gotten is thinning it out a bit. You don't wanna thin it out too much because then you're gonna run into problems with the Fadow-Verleen rule and it cracking. So anyways, I'm gonna show you. Next, you're just gonna need an empty jar or like a mug or a cup or something. But here I got an empty jar to do my mixture. So here I have my jar and I'm gonna show you the combination you wanna use. So what I typically do is I do about 2 parts stand oil to 1 part Gamsol. So for 2 parts, 1, 2. So we just give it a bit of a 2 count. Then for the Gamsol, just a dash. That will count as 1. Now next what I'll do is I'll take my palette knife and I'll just give it a stir, put the lid on, and then give it a shake. Make sure everything is nice and blended up. As I mentioned earlier, you want to be careful with your mixing ratio with the Gamsol and the stand oil and how it plays into the Fadow-Verleen rule and the picture cracking. Now the reason for that is because Gamsol or any paint thinner is going to thin your paint and it's going to make it more diluted. So when you're applying it to the stand oil, you want to use a very minimal amount that's not going to overpower the stand oil or the linseed oil and have it be more dominant, because then that's when you're going to run into problems. With the stand oil, it's, as far as I know, it's the thickest oil medium. So you're pretty much safe as long as you don't saturate it too much. With the linseed oil now, you don't really have to use any paint thinner or Gamsol. With the linseed oil, it's thin enough that you can just apply it straight on. All right, so let's begin our oiling in process. So on my brush, just gonna get some of the mixture in there. And you want to make sure that your painting is dry to the touch before you do any of this. So as you can see already, the colors are starting to be way more saturated than they were. So sometimes what happens is that there might be a little bit too much of the mixture on your painting. So in that case, you can just take a paper towel or a cloth and just gently wipe it off. You don't want to wipe everything off or wipe too hard because you still want the mixture to be on there. You just want to remove the excess. So have some colors on the palette. Now we're going to go in according to the reference and add in some of the dimples. We're going to touch up the eyebrows, touch up some of the dark areas, and we're going to add some of the details to the lips. And we're also going to do some glazes of color. Now, I did say add in dimples, but what I actually meant is add in some of the pores. And that's one of the things that's really going to make your portraits look realistic. It's going to make it look more natural looking. And just here you see me using a sable brush, and I was just putting on some of that color there. Then going over it again and just softening it out. That's the thing with portraits that a lot of people miss a lot of times when painting, is that you want it to have that nice soft look and have that sort of glow. So there you see the dimples going in there. Not dimples, sorry. There you see the pores going in there. And right now it looks a little rough, but we just want to mark out where everything is going to be, and then we can make our adjustments as we go along. And then later, as we progress in the painting and the oiling in technique, then we can soften it out a bit. So just filling in some of those small details around the lips, earlier with the eyebrows. And we just want to get every small detail that we can as possible. Now, I'm still working towards hyperrealism, and some of you might be working towards that as one of the techniques you use. And this is definitely a good starting point. So here I'm using a Q-tip, just soften it out. And now you see how the pores look significantly different, where it's still there, it still has a presence, but now it's just not as sharp. Then we want to add in some of our highlights, and then we're just going to smooth that out again with a Q-tip. It's funny how you can use a Q-tip in pretty much any medium when it comes to art, because I used to use the Q-tip also when doing color pencil work in graphite and charcoal. So there we have a close-up, and you can see the small details that I've been putting in and how it's made the portrait look different with the oiling technique. And now here's the before and after, drastically different. Thank you guys so much for watching. Check out the full time lapse of King Von here. Make sure to subscribe. Peace.